Welcome to the Verse by Verse Bible Study. This week, Kevin continues our journey through Ezekiel as God prepares to leave the temple in Jerusalem with a message of doom and deliverance.
We'll just get started here. Which vision are we talking about? We're talking about Ezekiel 10 and 11, both the figure of God leaving the temple after almost 400 years, and then also a vision of the elders on the east gate and what the leadership of Jerusalem was up to. And so we're going to have Lord leaves the temple, part of it, a message of doom and a message of deliverance. And it's unusual. If you haven't pre-read this, you'll be interested in seeing how this works around. The people you think are going to come out of this okay aren't, and the people who you think have been exiled are going to come out pretty good. So with that, I didn't mean to give away the plot, but there it is. Okay. Ezekiel number 1, somebody 10:1. Somebody want to read that?
I looked and I saw a likeness of a throne of lapis lazuli above the vault that was over the heads of the cherubim.
Okay. And this is an image, and it's not perfect because you don't have the wheel within a wheel. You do have the wheel with the eyes, but it's talking about the throne being supported by cherubim, and we'll get into that. But I couldn't get AI to do this correctly. So you've got 3 different faces, but you don't have lion, eagle, cherub, and man. But you get the idea. I like the image of the throne though, so that's good. And okay, somebody want to read Ezekiel 10:2?
The Lord said to the man clothed in wool, "Go in among the wheels beneath the cherubim. Fill your hands with burning coals from among the cherubim and scatter them over the city." As I watched, he went in.
Okay. And I want you to visualize there's 4 cherubim, had the 4 faces I just talked about. Each has a wheel. So there's 4 cherubim and 4 wheels. And they're supporting a platform which supports this lapis lazuli throne. And now he's telling them that there's coals underneath. Between the wheels and between the cherubim, go in and get some of these coals. Okay. The angel, I say the angel, it's really a man in linen, but we think he's an angel, was giving the job of marking the righteous in 9:6. You remember he had a scribe's pen and he was marking the righteous. Now he's given the task of marking out divine wrath and destruction. Okay. This is a symbol of God's judgment against wickedness. And I want to talk about cherubim a little bit because it confused Ezekiel apparently, even though he's seen them in chapter 1, but they're slightly different here. So he was kind of confused, but I thought we'd talk about them for a second. I get a couple of depictions of the temple. So the Jewish people, and especially the priestly class, ought to have been pretty familiar with the characteristics of cherubim because they were all depicted on the temple walls. And you can see, I don't know if you can see it there, but there are some winged creatures there on the walls. So depending on what part of the temple you were allowed to go into, and we'll see another one here in a sec, you would have seen depictions of cherubim. And here's another one, and you can see winged creatures on there. I must think that they have some sort of documentation of what the temple looked like and what the decoration was, because most of them are pretty consistent, most of the depictions you see. And we're going to see one from the templemount.org here in a minute, which I would think would be the most accurate if they do have some documentation. You can see this is a cutaway view of the temple. And you could see even the Holy of Holies, of course, would have had cherubim, but only one guy a year would get to go in there. The next one in the center would have had a lot of depictions, and I would think the priestly class would be in there. But even if you're out here on this porch looking up, you would have seen depictions of cherubim. They would also have seen, if the guy that went in the Holy of Holies would have seen it, but if they ever transported the ark outside the temple, or like when they were carrying it before from the tabernacle toward Jerusalem or toward the new temple, people would have seen that, and there's a depiction of cherubim on that. And I think we've all been familiar, in the lower right corner is the one they used in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay. And I think to me, it seems the most logical because the wings form a solid platform upon which the Lord to sit, and he would hover above that. The one in the upper right is kind of interesting too, because it's got one set of wings is a chair, and the other set of wings is a back. So it's a little bit more elaborate. But you can see there's some differences there. And on the lower left, they're depicting cherubim there, but they have 4 wings instead of 2, which will play into it here in just a minute. So just some ideas of that they would have known what a cherubim was theoretically. Okay, somebody want to read Ezekiel 10:3-5?
Now the cherubim were standing on the south side of the temple when the man went in, and the cloud filled with the inner court. Then the glory of the Lord went up from the cherubim and passed over the threshold of the temple, and the house was filled with a cloud, and the court was full of the brightness of the Lord's glory. And the sound of wings of the cherubim was heard even in the outer court, like the voice of Almighty God when he speaks.
Thank you. He went in, the cherubim were standing on the south side. They were eventually going to move to the east side, which is where some action takes place. And I don't know about you, but before I read this in depth, and I remembered the story of the Lord leaving the temple, it was more like, well, I'm out of here. See ya. I'm gone. But this is a progression through these 2 chapters. And he's deliberately doing some things, and it almost seems like he's reticent to leave. He doesn't want to leave the temple. He doesn't want to leave his people because he knows that means that the covenant's been broken and he's breaking it. He's the one breaking it. They broke the covenant, but he's the one breaking down the relationship. So the cherubim were standing on the south side, and they're anticipating the Lord to come to them, but he's going to eventually move to the eastern gate. But the significance of that is they think the north side is where the idol of jealousy was. So God is moving away from the idolatry, and he's making a show of that. Okay. And his audience would have been familiar with cherubim from the temple engravings and those who could see it, the Ark of the Covenant. They also must have known, since the cherubim have been static for so long, that if the cherubim were moving, God must be moving also. This is Ezekiel audience that he's going to be telling later in Babylon. Okay. The significant, that's the northern gate is associated with the executioners and the idol of jealousy. Remember the executioners from last week that Steve talked about? Okay, chariot. Let me explain the word. Chariot is sometimes used and it may be in your Bible also, but in the commentators, the chariot consists of the wheels, the cherubim holding them, the platform, and the throne above. Okay, so that whole unit is considered a chariot by Bible scholars. Okay. And the glory is going to rise from its permanent place, which is above the Ark of the Covenant, in the inner sanctum, the Holy of Holies, and moves toward the east threshold. And the cherubim move to meet him there. Okay. Temple is filled with a cloud and the brilliance of the Lord's glory. Okay. Now, it repeats, I think, twice in these 2 chapters. The wings of the cherubim are heard throughout the complex, and they're loud. They're like the sound of rushing waters. Okay, they are very loud, but they give the impression of they're getting restless, they're moving, they're flapping their wings, and they're getting ready to move. Okay, this is the best I could come up with, but it's not bad. It's just not good. There's the cloud in the temple and the brilliance of the Lord, and a couple of I finally got, I think I got 3 or maybe 4 cherubim in there, but I couldn't get them to hold wheels, and I couldn't get the coals to move over no matter how I tried. So I burned about 10 credits doing that. But you can see the man in linen has got a bucket. They're going to eventually hand him some coals. You'll notice the eyes on the wings. Okay, and that's a little bit different in this version than in 10:1 or in chapter 1. Okay, we'll discuss the differences there in a minute. Okay, and if somebody could read 6-8.
When the Lord commanded the man in linen, take fire from among the wheels, from among the cherubim, the man went in and stood beside a wheel. Then one of the cherubim reached out his hand to the fire that was among them, He took up some of it and put it into the hands of the man in linen, who took it and went out. Under the wings of the cherubim could be seen what looked like human hands. I looked and I saw beside the cherubim 4 wheels, one beside each of the cherubim. The wheels sparkled like topaz. As for their appearance, the 4 of them looked alike, which was like a wheel intersecting a wheel.
Okay. This is another depiction of it, and they came up with the what we consider the classic version of cherubim. Cherubim would have probably had the bodies of men, and here it depicts a. This is actually pretty good. It's got a man, a lion, a cherubim, and then another man. So this close we get, and but the idea is the cherubim actually picked up these hot coals and put them in the guy's hands.
But no ox head.
What's that?
But no ox head.
No ox head. And that's an interesting point. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I'll have something interesting to say about it. No, we'll get to that in a second. And then Alice just read this, and this is just a little bit of clarification here. Jerry first pointed this out to us, that these things are like wheels within a wheel, and that's what I'm trying to depict on the right there with eyes. And what's really neat about that is I just came to the understanding for the first time here when Jerry talked about it, that this is God's way of commanding the universe and knowing what's going on everywhere. You know, Jerry said when the angels were given, or the cherubim were given an instruction in the clap of thunder or lightning, flash of lightning, they went to accomplish that task and came back before the clap of lightning was over. The flash of lightning is over.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating to me. That means it can go all the way across God's known creation and back again in that time. So, and there's a pretty good depiction of the cherubim. This would be the one with the ox head on it, but it has 4 wings and it's got the wheel within a wheel. So I wanted to put that in there. Sorry to be repetitious, but I'm trying to get you guys thinking about what these things are looking like, because they're going to appear again in the rest of Ezekiel. This is kind of what Jerry talked about too, but if somebody want to read 11 through 13.
As they moved, they would go in any one of the 4 directions the cherubim faced. The wheels did not turn about as the cherubim went. The cherubim went in whatever direction the head faced, without turning as they went. Their entire bodies, including their back, their hands, and their wings, were completely full of eyes, as were their 4 wheels. I heard the wheels being called the whirling wheels.
So this is the way the Lord is using them for locomotion and observation. Okay. And this depiction up here, strangely enough, I was just looking, this is not AI, or it's not my AI, but I looked on here and I thought, oh, that's kind of an interesting one. He's got the 4 heads, he's got the eyes on the wings and the back and everywhere else, and it's got the wheel within a wheel. And then I looked at the source and it was some paranormal thing. So, but then I found it on several other Christian sites too, but I think it's a fairly good depiction. Okay, verses 9.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if you really think about what the purpose is for all of this.
Yeah.
Are those wheels creating wormholes? Are the eyes and the wings guidance systems? I mean, what is the purpose of what we're seeing? It's not just fantasy.
Yeah.
It's reality. So what's the real purpose behind? And does God use that to send angels out? What happens?
Yeah. If I remember, the cherubim are pretty high-ranking angels, if I'm not mistaken. So they probably do have some, if they're assigned a task, they might take 10 angels with them or something like that. But I do believe that the whole thing with all the eyes and the wings and the wheel within a wheel is all about locomotion and observation. This is how God keeps his eyes on everything. It's the method he chose to observe and move around the universe. Okay, verses 9 through 13, they're depicting the makeup of the heavenly chariot, which I've already kind of talked about, sapphire throne and cherubim with wheels. Okay. As Jerry pointed out, when he talked about it the first time, locomotion's in an unswerving line. There is nothing deviating them from their task when they go. Okay, wherever the head is facing is where they went. And it was interesting in one of the commentaries, they can predict what direction by the face on the cherubim is. And when the guy came in from the south looking north, he was facing the cherubim's face, I believe. So it's interesting. Well, I got a slide in here about that, and we'll see if I remember that right. Okay. The eyes in chapter 1 are only on the wheels or the rims. In chapter 10, they're now on the wings, backs of the wheels, or the cherubim. Are the wheels sentient or a special class of angels? That was one of the questions that came up in the commentaries, but they never really answered the question. But there's some leading language here coming up that might tell us that. But I think, well, I'm not going to spoil it. I'll wait till we get there. Okay. Here's kind of what I'm talking. Somebody want to read verse 14?
And each of the cherubim had 4 faces. One face that was that of a cherub. The second face was of a human being. The third was a face of a lion, and the fourth face of an eagle.
Okay. Now, in Ezekiel 1, we have human, lion, eagle, and bull. Okay. In Ezekiel 10, human, lion, eagle, and cherubim. Okay. Well, what happened? Okay. And we don't know. It doesn't explain it anywhere in here. But one of the, when they, somehow in Babylon, they have a Talmudic tradition from then that since the Jewish people repented for their actions worshiping the golden calf, they replaced the face of the bull with a cherubim. Okay, so that's a tradition. Whether that's what God did, I don't know, but there's a reason for it. I just don't. That was the only explanation I could find. Anybody else got any better ideas? Okay. So you can see here, each of these faces is depicted as a direction. Okay, so when the guy came in from the south, he would have seen the human face. I'm sorry, but you can see the lion goes to the west, the eagle to the north, and the bull is replaced by the cherub. Okay. So there's some significance to it. What it is, we don't know, except that you can tell directions by what face you're looking at. Okay. Did Ezekiel see a living, unitized creature? That's a question, because it sort of says the wheels have some sentience of their own. But I'll just go ahead and read this. And the cherubim were lifted up. This was the living creature I saw by the river Chebar. When the cherubim went, the wheels went beside them, and when the cherubim lifted their wings to mount up from the earth, the same wheels also did not turn from beside them. When the cherubim stood still, the wheels stood still. And when one was lifted up, the other lifted itself up. I should have highlighted itself. For the spirit of the living creature was in them. So somehow this thing forms a being, I think. Okay. The whole chariot is a living, breathing, thinking unit. Okay. What the significance of that, I don't know, but it's pretty interesting when you get to thinking about it. Okay. Yahweh, and we all know who Yahweh is, prepares/completes his final departure from the temple. And I put it that way because it sounds like he's actually completing it, but he's going to stop in chapter 11 and point back to something in chapter 10. So, and I'll point that out when we get there. Okay. Somebody want to read, let's see, that would be chapter 18 or verse 18 and 19.
Then the glory of the Lord departed from the threshold of the temple and stood over the cherubim. And the cherubim lifted their wings and mounted up from the earth in my sight. When they went out, the wheels were beside them, and they stood at the door of the east gate of the Lord's house. And the glory of the God of Israel was above them.
Okay. So now he has moved above the cherubim. They have stood on the threshold, and they have just moved just outside the threshold toward the east gate. Or by the east gate. Okay. So now we've seen a progression. It's not just, I'm out of here, which is always kind of the impression I had. It was, he went from the Holy of Holies seated above the Ark of the Covenant, where he'd been for almost 400 years. He goes to the inner court, then he goes to the threshold, then he goes to the eastern gate. And the eastern gate is where some action will take place in the next chapter. Okay. You kind of get the impression he knows how momentous this is, that the covenant has been broken and he's breaking his relationship with the people. Okay. So he's going to do it, but he really doesn't want to. So that's the thing. Okay. The glory of God, the cherub, a chariot, and the cherubim meet at the east gate threshold. Okay. Okay. The chariot provides a proclamation of God's glory and sovereignty, but also provides a mean to abandon his temple. And he's doing it in style. I think that says something. Okay. He is also declaring the termination of a special relationship with his people for now. Okay. Or this particular batch of the Jewish people. Okay. And again, Ezekiel comes to a conclusion here. Somebody want to read 20:22?
These were the living creatures I had seen beneath the God of Israel by the Bar River, and I realized they were cherubim. Each had 4 faces and 4 wings, and under their wings was what looked like human hands. Their faces had the same appearance as those I had seen by the Bar River. Each one went straight ahead.
Okay. Yeah. And these are the same ones that he saw in chapter 1. Okay. And it's pretty good, except for the bull and the cherub. It's very, very similar. Okay. Now, why was he so confused? Okay. You would think a priestly caste person would know, but I made up a little, actually, this, I didn't make it up. This came out of a book, but it says, the cherubim over the ark, there were 2 of them. In Ezekiel's version, there are 4 of them. Okay. In the over the ark, the cherubim had 2 wings per cherubim. And Ezekiel's vision, they had 4 wings per creature. Over the ark, 1 head per creature. In Ezekiel's vision, there's 4 heads or 4 faces on 1 head per creature. Over the ark, it's a human head. Looks very similar to a human head. And in Ezekiel's vision, it's eagle, cherub, human, lion. Where did he see these? The one was in the Holy of Holies in Jerusalem. And then it says outside the temple in Jerusalem, but he's actually he's been transported to Jerusalem, but he will be telling them back in Babylon about this. The ark cherubim are static. The Ezekiel vision, the cherubim are infinitely mobile. They're about to take God to wherever he wants to go, to his other place of residence. And then the last difference is the cherubim over the ark are the bearers of the invisible throne of God. God sits on there, but you really don't see him. And in Ezekiel's version, it's the visible throne of Yahweh. So a lot of differences between all those cherubim. Is it possible that God tweaks some cherubim for special tasks? I don't know, and it doesn't really tell us anywhere in any of the commentaries.
And that's a different time frame of man's understanding of God.
Mm-hmm.
So
what do you mean?
the ark. Oh, I'm thinking of
Oh yeah, it's hundreds of years old. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it could be an evolution of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
just a thought here.
Mhm.
Because as you're reading this, it strikes me, we have to look at the whole context here. Ephesians 6:12, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly realms.
Yeah.
So there's a battle ongoing.
Mhm.
And so we tend to think of all of this as it relates to us, but there's a spiritual war going on.
Yeah.
That there may be other reasons for what Ezekiel is seeing. And now you can kind of get a better sense of God's feeling of betrayal. It's like, are you taking the enemy's side?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm fighting this battle, this spiritual battle, which of course he can end at any time.
Mm-hmm.
But it just dawned on me that we tend to think of evil and demons and Satan and all of that being in hell or being under the earth or being somewhere else. They're in the same heavenly realms.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot going on that maybe we don't take into account.
There's a real good book by that, and I think it's called This Present Darkness.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and that gives you good imagery of the battle in between heaven and the forces of darkness. Yes, sir.
Is there anything like this where God is moving into the temple?
Into the temple?
Yeah, where we have this kind of a video.
I don't know. I'll look that up though. I'll give you a report.
I was thinking about like when Solomon built the temple, or when they built the one out of.
I could give that out as homework, couldn't I?
Well, we went over a while back. We went over Exodus, right?
Yeah.
Where they built the first temple.
Yeah.
But I don't remember anything like this, and so.
Let's look that up, and I'll give a report, or somebody will give a report. You want to give a report next week?
Sure.
Okay. You don't have enough to do, right?
Nice delegation.
Yeah. See, all you guys do. Yes, sir.
Ezekiel 43 describes the presence of God coming through the east gate of Ezekiel's temple, which is a symbolic temple, but it does describe his presence coming through the same gate by which he departs in this chapter.
Yeah.
And then the east gate is all blocked up right now.
Yes, now it is.
Because they don't want him to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna keep
Like
it
that's
down.
gonna stop everybody.
You had a point?
That was
That point? Okay. Okay. We'll look that up. I'll get you an answer on that. That would have been a good sidebar.
It's just like.
I had to give up about 3 sidebars because I thought it'd go too long. So, okay. Now this is pretty interesting. This is takes a little bit of a turn. God is still standing near the east gate, and it will refer back to that. Does somebody want to read Ezekiel 11, 1-3?
Then the Spirit lifted me up and brought me to the gate of the house of the Lord that faces east. There at the entrance of the gate were 25 men, and I saw among them Jazaniah, son of Azur, and Elisha, son of Benha, leaders of the people. The Lord said to me, Son of man, these are the men who are plotting evil and giving wicked advice in this city. They say, haven't our houses been recently rebuilt? This city is a pot, and we are the meat in it.
Okay, interesting. What does all this mean? It kind of this one of those ones you read. If you just read by it, you go, I'll catch up with it later. You know? But this is really interesting. Okay, the elders at the east gate. Some things we need to know. These elders are gathered at the east gate, which is precisely where the throne chariot is at this time. If you refer back to 10:19, so it's tying these two time frames together and these two chapters together. So the Lord has stopped here to give Ezekiel the important message for this chapter before he departs. Jazaniah, just so you know, and Pelatiah are not known historical figures, but the fact that Ezekiel recognizes them as acquaintances, it concretizes them and historicizes them. I'm not sure if either one of those is a word, but in other words, they are now. Yeah. They're bad leaders under a weak king. The weak king has let them do whatever they want. The best leadership was exiled to Babylon. Okay, so these guys are kind of not the best of character.
And Kevin, that last week, we looked at how the leaders, the 25 leaders, were at the east gate, but they were facing away from the gate. They were the east entrance to the temple. They were facing toward the east and bowing down to the sun. And it's just interesting that this starts to tie this together. And God's not going to leave without.
No, he's going to take a swipe at him, and we'll see that. He'll tell him through Ezekiel, I'm going to take a swipe at you, and I ain't going to miss. No, God wouldn't mispronounce. He wouldn't use ain't. He would say, I'm not.
It's a Kevinism.
Yeah, that's a Kevinism.
Is Ezekiel
okay?
Is Ezekiel in Babylon, or is he in?
He has been lifted up and taken to Jerusalem.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Right. He will be, before this is all over, the last thing he does is they take him back to Jerusalem and he tells them exactly what he's seen. Okay. So, right now, he is actually, God has transported him to see what's going on in Jerusalem. Okay. These leaders do whatever they want, thinking that, hey, we're the leaders, so we must be right, you know. But They assume the ones in Babylon are the ones being punished because they're in exile. Actually, nothing could be further from the truth. We're going to find in the next 21 verses that God's going to destroy Jerusalem and its citizens, including these guys. One's going to get it sooner than later. Okay, those exiled have been given by sanctuary by the Lord, and it is they who will rebuild Jerusalem and restore true worship. Although they're guilty of idolatry, there's some hint that they're exploiting and indulging in misuse of their power when they say devise iniquity and give wicked counsel. There's some evidence that maybe they used their judges to apply false verdicts against people, maybe even kill them. Okay, that's why he's going to refer to corpses.
So
here.
much unlike our world.
Yeah, nothing like we
Go
have
back
here.
to there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
Boy, when you read this stuff, my mind keeps coming to present day. So, okay, not the time to build houses. Very odd statement. But what that does is it applies a smugness and complacency and how things are being done. We don't have to do anything new. Do anything new. We're doing fine, you know. And besides that, we're killing people, so there's plenty of housing, you know. Okay, this city is the cauldron, and we are the meat. Implies they believe they're the choicest pieces of meat in the stew. Okay, they think pretty highly of themselves, as arrogant people usually do. And
Do they not know what happens to the stew?
Okay, Ezekiel's going to give this metaphor a twist pretty quick here. Okay, it's a more sinister twist. Okay, so this thing goes from being like, what is this cauldron stuff to aha? It's pretty good. Okay, and here's where I was talking about. Therefore, prophesy against them. Prophesy, O son of man. He says it twice in the same sentence. It's important.
That's where I'm getting confused. Is he prophesying to the people that are in Babylon, or to the?
He will be going back to he's repeating this here, but he will go back and repeat it in Babylon.
He's doing it both places.
He will.
Well, the people in Jerusalem are just off the charts, really just screwing up big time.
Oh yeah.
And he's showing Ezekiel what he's planning for Jerusalem so that when he sends them back to Babylon, he has a convincing story for those people that are the remnant of the Jewish nation to change their ways and to know that he has set it up so they can be again in their homeland and be safe and be attentive to God's will. So it's like, yeah, Ezekiel's here or is there, but he's really learning what God has planned to do for the betterment of his people.
Thank you. Okay, that's it. So.
This whole story of the Ezekiel is just monumental because there's things that we can read in it and see in it today.
Yes.
And we've got to learn from what happened to Jerusalem.
Yeah. And to your point, he's being told what is going to happen. He's allowed to listen to these men, and then God's telling him what these men are doing. He's going to go back and prophesy in Babylon.
Right. And to me, what it seems like is he's preparing the way or preparing the people in Babylon to be the people that he wants to.
Yeah. When he goes back to Babylon, he's going to have some good news for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, is Daniel already there, or he's growing up there at that time? Or
does anybody know that? He's a contemporary. Yeah.
See, that's why I say it seems like he's preparing the way for the people that are there
to come back.
To come back and be the people that he wants them to be.
Okay.
When they come back.
Okay. There. That's it again. Okay. When God tells you twice in the same sentence, you better do something, you probably ought to do it and do it right now. There's an urgency. God is being urgent about this. So, because God's going to set all this in motion very shortly. So Ezekiel begins to prophesy, but when he goes back to Babylon. Okay. The pronouncement of guilt. This is God pronouncing guilt on it. So somebody want to read 5-6, please?
Then the Spirit of the Lord fell upon me and said to me, Speak, thus says the Lord, thus you have said, O house of Israel, for I know the things that come into your mind. You have multiplied your slain in this city, and you have filled its streets. with the slain.
Yeah. And in some versions says you have filled the streets with corpses, which is part of the cauldron metaphor that we'll see coming up. Okay.
That makes another point too, because I think a lot of us don't think God knows what we're thinking. But he does. Even if we're not acting on it, he knows what we're thinking.
Yeah. Wait for the takeaway.
Those are motives.
I've broken it down here, the pronouncement of guilt. The Spirit of the Lord fell upon me and said to me, speak. In other words, the Lord's going to come on him and give him help and being his mouthpiece. Okay. Thus says Lord, thus you have said, O house of Israel, for I know the things that have come into your mind. Okay. God doesn't just watch what you do. He knows the innermost workings of your mind probably better than you do. And probably is
Which can be a
being
good
generous.
thing.
Yes.
It can be what?
Can be a good thing.
It can be if you're right with God.
Exactly.
Yeah. You have multiplied your slain in the city, and you filled its streets with a slain. It could be, some versions say corpses. This implies judicial murder and using the system for personal gain. Okay, here we go. 11:7-12. Somebody want to read that?
Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. The bodies you have thrown there are the meat, and this city is the pot, but I will drive you out of it. You fear the sword, and the sword is what I will bring against you, declares the sovereign Lord. I will drive you out of the city and deliver you into the hands of foreigners and inflict punishment on you. You will fall by the sword, and I will execute judgment on you at the borders of Israel. Then you will know that I am Lord. This city will not be a pot for you, nor will you be the meat in it. I will execute judgment on you at the borders of Israel.
Okay.
Through 12.
Yeah.
And you will know that I am the Lord, for you have not followed my decrees or kept my laws, but have conformed to the standards of the nations around you.
Yeah. Mine says the custom you followed according to the custom of the Gentiles. So, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
yeah. Gentiles.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Anyway, I picked out an illustration here to kind of define. There's I AI'd a typical pot of stew that would have been in biblical Israel, and that's what it looks like. And then I picked a picture or a depiction of early Jerusalem, and you can see why he picked this image. It's a walled city filled with people, and so I thought now it starts to make sense. Why he picked that. Okay. Therefore, thus says the Lord, your slain whom you have laid in its midst, they are the meat, and this city is the cauldron. But I shall bring you out of the midst of it. You have feared the sword, and I will bring a sword upon you, says the Lord God. Okay. While these leaders consider themselves the choicest pieces of meat, and they're safely stored away in Jerusalem while everybody else, all the sinners have been exiled or whatever, Yahweh accuses them of being the butchers who've made a stew out of the citizens of Jerusalem. Now, is a pot and the stews kind of making sense more now? Okay. Yahweh tells them he's going to remove them from the safety of Jerusalem, and theirs will be death by sword. That'll happen when the Babylonians take them over. Okay. And they will be taken to the borders of Israel. They will not be killed in Jerusalem. They'll be taken over there and killed, I think. Okay. This is an expanded version of Ezekiel 11:7, and I'll just read that. And I said, hear now, O heads of Jacob, and you rulers of the house of Israel, is it not for you to know justice, you who hate good and love evil, who strip the skin from my people and the flesh from their bones, who also eat the flesh of my people, flay their skin from them, break their bones, and chop them in pieces, like meat for the pot, like flesh in the cauldron. Okay, so Micah got in on this action too. So that's a pretty fleshed out, and bad choice of words, fleshed out version of that. Okay. Sorry, it came out before I thought. From its midst is the word it's derived from is mitoka, and that suggests part of the rendering process when they're butchering a calf or something like that, and they separate the carcass from the offal, and the offal is unusable basically. Okay, he's going to hand them over to strangers, the Babylonians in this case, and in these two verses, he's removing the basis of being secure in Jerusalem. Okay, 11. Okay, this city shall not be your cauldron, nor shall you be the meat in his midst. I will judge you at the border of Israel, and you shall know that I am Lord, for you have not walked in my statutes, nor executed my judgments, but have done according to the customs of the Gentiles which are all around you. They're not Jerusalem not going to be a refuge for these guys because they didn't keep the covenant, and they've instead followed the customs of those around the Gentiles. Basically, the citizens of Jerusalem would degenerate into paganism. And that's okay. Now this is interesting. Ezekiel 11:13. Could somebody read that, please?
Now, as I was prophesying, Pelatiah, son of Benaiah, died. Then I fell face down and cried out in a loud voice, Alas, sovereign Lord, will you completely destroy the remnant of Israel?
And remember, Ezekiel was asked this once before in chapter 9, didn't get much of an answer. It was left to believe, no, they're not going to be written up for you. We're going to get a little bit better answer here now. Things are going to start turning around. The death of Pelatiah, son of Benaiah. Okay, it means Yahweh has delivered, son of Yahweh has been built up, or has built up. This very name symbolizes the hope of Jerusalem. The fact that he's dead, and so unexpectedly, is a symbol that they've lost that hope. Okay. Pelatiah's death is a down payment. In other words, the other 24 are going to get it too. And he's warning of the coming deaths of other leaders and the demise of Jerusalem. Okay. Ezekiel's lament about the future of Israel and whether there will be any remnant is answered here with hope in 11:16. I'm going to get to that. Okay. Somebody want to read 11:14 and 15?
Again, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, your brethren, your relatives, your countrymen, and all the house of Israel in its entirety are those about whom the inhabitants of Jerusalem have said, Get far away from the Lord. This land has been given to us as a possession.
Okay. Now this is identifying Ezekiel's surrounding people and who's going to be, who's this referring to. Kind of hard to tell whether it's Ezekiel's people or the people in Jerusalem, but they say it's Ezekiel. So your brothers, and sometimes says your brothers, your relatives, refers to Ezekiel's nuclear family, who are all taken into exile as a whole with him. Your countrymen, it might say in your Bible, men of your redemption, which is really confusing, refers to those that Ezekiel stood up for vulnerable family members and people he took responsibility for to restore clan wholeness. The house of Israel in its entirety refers to the exiles as a clan. They've become a clan now, of which Ezekiel is one member. Okay, does that clear it up? Okay. Okay, Yahweh's rebuttal. Okay, this is good news about the remnant. Okay, somebody want to read that?
Therefore say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Although I sent them far away among the nations and scattered them among the countries, yet for a little while I have been a sanctuary for them in the countries where they have gone.
Okay. So here we see the whole plot. God knows Jerusalem's going to, fall apart and they're going to fall away from him. So he takes some good people, sticks them in various places, in this case, Babylon, and he gives them sanctuary there because they're exiled, because they're going through hardship, because they're away from Jerusalem. They maintain a great relationship with God and know they have to rely on God because that's all they have. They don't have the walled city of Jerusalem and everything else now. They only have their God to rely on. Mm-hmm. And they maintain that relationship with him. And that's what they're talking about right here.
It's interesting because he did the same thing with Joseph and Mary and Jesus, sent them to Egypt while that wickedness was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a good comparison. Yeah. So in 8 and 9, which Steve did last week, there was little hope of a remnant. He didn't really say, I'm going to take care of you. In 11:16, God mentions sanctuary for those scattered among the nations. But what he's saying is, I put you there to protect you. A new Exodus. Somebody want to read that? 11:17.
Therefore say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will gather you from the nations and bring you back from the countries where you have been scattered. And I will give you back the land of Israel again.
Okay. Now this is referring to, they're going to go back to Jerusalem, but I couldn't help but think about the modern day Israel. when I read this. So I thought that was pretty interesting. All this time we thought this was Cyrus. He's such a great guy. He let the Jews go back to Jerusalem. He let them take their temple goods. It was all God's plan. He was using Cyrus. Okay, a new land. You might want to read that. 18.
And they will go there, and they will take away all its detestable things and all its admonitions from there.
Yep. So these guys are going to right all the wrongs that are going on in Jerusalem. They've been in exile. They've been kept pure, and they're going to go back and make it new. So when Jerusalem gets destroyed, here the Babylonians are coming here in a few years. They've been cast out of Israel and put to the sword. The exiles are going to return. They're going to rebuild Jerusalem. They're going to rebuild the temple, and they're going to introduce true worship. Now, you remember when they came back, it took them about 70 years to rebuild the temple. There was some controversy about that. And so, but we'll talk about that some other time. But they've learned in exile and in captivity to lean on and follow their one true God.
It's so fascinating here because it didn't dawn on me till you just said this, that part of the reason I think God removed them and exiled them was they would remember the temple as it should have been, not as it declined with the leadership and they put the idols in there and they did all these other things in there.
Yeah, somehow he seemed to remove the right people. Well, he's God. He knew who the right people are. But yeah, it's very true, you know. And but they came back, and I guess they got busy, and they didn't rebuild the temple as fast as they probably should have. But that's another story. We won't do that. Then I will give them one heart, and I will put a new spirit within them, and take the stony heart out of their flesh, and give them a heart of flesh, that they may walk in my statutes and keep my judgments and do them, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God. How many times has he said this? You know, and okay, and then he turns a bit against the people in Jerusalem. Now 11:21. But for those whose hearts follow the desire for their detestable things and their abominations, I will recompense their deeds on their own heads, says the Lord. And I got to look at it, and this is kind of a repeat of part of 9:10. Okay, word for word. Okay, so isn't it interesting how the people in Jerusalem, they're in Jerusalem and they have a temple, and you know, they're the leaders, and they think they're doing pretty good, and it's really they're doing bad, and he's going to switch places between the exiles and the people in Jerusalem. When you start reading this chapter, you wouldn't have seen that coming, would you? Okay, Yahweh's final departure from the temple. So the cherubim lifted up their wings with the wheels beside them, and the glory of the God of Israel was high above them, and the glory of the Lord went up from the midst of the city and stood on the mountain, which is on the east side of the city. So now he's completed his leaving of the temple, and he's gone to the Mount of Olives. So, and that's interesting. Where did Jesus go whenever he? Okay, yeah.
And where's he going to come back?
Yep. And this is my best try at AI on what that looked like. Okay, didn't get the wheel and wheel, but I got the wheel with eyes. I got a lot of eyes on the wings. The throne of God with a sort of a presence up there, the smoky, cloudy, brilliant presence of God. Got three faces on them. I don't know what they are. You can't tell. Anyways, I like to do this because I have a vision of it in my head, and I want you guys to have a vision of it in your head, because it must have been magnificent. Okay. To your point, Don, Ezekiel shares the good news with the exiles. Then the Spirit took me up and brought me in a vision by the Spirit of God into Chaldea, which is Babylon, to those in captivity. And the vision that I had seen went up from me. So I spoke to those in captivity of all the things the Lord had shown me. So he has now prophesied.
Yeah, it seemed like when Ezekiel does these things among the exiles, that what he's doing is building up for like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel, all of those people are coming out of that.
Yeah. And that's where we get all our examples of people who are faithful to God.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Okay. He repeats what he's seen to the exiles in Babylon. And Ezekiel does not see, which I think is a shame. But then I thought, wow, what a life. What the things he got to see, you know? And we're going to keep talking about those as we go on. Takeaways. This is finally, okay. Ezekiel learned that the people who are obedient to God are at the center of God's will and attention, even though their circumstances made them seem like cast-offs and nobodies. Okay, that's a good point. Okay. God doesn't work with the proud and arrogant, but he does great things with the humble. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Okay, and Sue, this is to yours. We know people's hearts by their speech and actions. God knows their deepest thoughts.
My mother used to tell me that when I was little. I know what you're thinking.
And then finally, I'm crediting this to Daniel Block and the Nikot commentary. God offers his protections and blessings to those who are covenantally related to him and who express that relationship by joyful obedience to his will. So I think that's good. And your homework assignment is to use the word covenantly in a casual conversation. Okay, that's it.